First of all, let me remind you why you need to pay yourself. Growing up, I was taught that when you want to start anything, the first question to ask is why. You understand? So, why should you pay yourself? First and most important, if you pay yourself, it will enable you to separate your personal life from business life. You understand? Your personal life and your business life are not, and they should never be the same. If you pay yourself, you'll be able to do this, because if you don't pay yourself, you will find yourself anytime you have personal needs, you find yourself going to the business account and taking money anyhow. And when you do this, it will be confusing the farm expenses and personal expenses, which is very bad. And that reason to pay yourself is because the farm, you should treat it like a real business. A real business have workers, a real business have people who earn salaries. So farm business, poultry farming business, is also a business on its own. So you have to treat it as a real business. And the third reason why you need to pay yourself is to maintain proper financial record, for financial record purpose. The essence of this is you don't know what tomorrow holds. Okay, something might happen and you need loan officers or loan outlets will ask you for your financial record. If you are not paying yourself, you will be confusing farm expenses, farm profits and personal income. If you have people who want to partner with you, or maybe who want to give you grants zones that are serious with their grant stuff, will want to see your financial record. And from your financial record, when you're showing that you don't pay yourself, they won't take you serious. And that reason to pay yourself is to reward yourself for your hard work. You understand? You're the one doing the hard work. Apart from doing the hard work, who is taking the risk? You are the one taking the risk, because poultry farming, to be sincere, even if you know how to raise birds, any mistake from any of your farm workers can take the business down. You get the point? And also, paying yourself enables you to plan your personal life. Plan your life. It will enable you to plan your personal life well. For instance, assuming you decide, okay, I want to be paying myself this specific amount, it will enable you plan yourself, your family life, your expenses around that amount you are paying yourself. And also, it brings about discipline. It brings about discipline. I've seen farmer who because his farm is doing well, he's not paying himself. His farm is doing well. He decided to go for a second wife. I will mention the tribe. Let it not be like but the farmer is a Nigerian. That's what you need to know. So what you need to just know is that if you don't pay yourself properly, you and your farm will be fighting for the same money. Okay? And trust me, one day your farm will lose, because your personal, if you are not disciplined enough and you fight with your farm, as in struggling with cash, personal life and farm money, you are fighting, who one day your personal need will will be greater than that of farm, and your farm will lose, and at the end your farm might crash because your cash flow is being jeopardized. But the summary of the whole thing is that when you are paying yourself, enable just make sure that you don't overpay yourself. Don't overpay yourself. You understand? Don't overpay yourself. I think I need to make this bold. How will okay, let me do it this way. Don't overpay yourself, because if you overpay yourself, you will be starving the farm of cash that would have been used to grow the farm. Now, having known our whys, the next thing we need to ask ourselves is, okay, the factors. The next thing you need to know is the factors. The factors that should determine how much you pay yourself as the farm owner. Because what farmer A is paying himself will definitely not be what farmer B is paying him or herself, because the factors are not the same in all the farms. First factor you have to consider is profitability. Is your farm making more profit? If your farm is making more profit, you can afford to pay yourself higher. If your farm is not making too much profit, you can be modest in how much you pay yourself. Second factor to consider is stability of income. You understand? If your farm's income is kind of stable and predictable, this normally happens for farms that are well established. In this particular condition now, you can fix yourself on a constant monthly salary. You understand? Constant monthly salary. But for some farms, especially the new farms where their incomes are not stable, they may not be able to afford to put themselves on a constant monthly salary. Instead, they can only be paying themselves at the end of raising every batch, any batch. You understand? So it's like you're raising birds. Let's say you're raising broilers for 6 weeks. As a new farm whose income is still unstable and unpredictable, you can't afford to be paying yourself at the end of the month. Since you are raising these birds for 6 weeks, 4 weeks, that means the birds are still not yet ready to be sold. So if you raise them up to that 6 weeks and then you start selling them, let's assume that the sales take you 1 week or 2 weeks, that's 7 weeks or 8 weeks. You end up paying yourself after you finish making sales and seeing what the profit is. So factor to consider is stability of income. If your income is stable, you can put yourself on a constant monthly salary. That's kind of, this constant makes it, you discipline yourself to be on a constant monthly salary. But if it's not stable, if your income is not stable, it's fluctuating and unpredictable, you may need to be paying yourself after every sales cycle. Now the third factor to consider is the farm size and the growth stage where you find yourself. Okay, let me assume that I'm raising 500 broilers and you that is watching this video, you are raising 5,000 broilers, and both of us got our best at the same time, and we raised it for the same period of time, maybe 6 weeks, and at the end of the 6 weeks we sold them the same price. You know who is going to make more profit? Definitely you are the one, because you have more base. I'm doing 500, you are doing 5,000. So for that reason, you can afford to pay yourself more because you are making more profit, which still bring us back to this profitability. Okay, but if your farm size is small, you have to be modest with how much you pay yourself. And that reason, another factor to consider is your farm goal, is business goal. Yeah, the goal of your farm. For instance, if you want to expand soon, like you want to build a new penthouse, you want to maybe increase the number of birds you raise per batch. Yeah, that means in that particular situation now you have a goal just in front of you. You have to reduce how much you pay yourself. You get the point? So that you have more money to be able to execute the farm goal. But if there is no expansion that is coming up any moment soon, you can afford to pay yourself more. You get the point? Another factor to determine how much you pay yourself is your personal living expenses, personal life. You understand? Personal living expenses. Your personal need is things like your family, what your family, the amount you need to run your family within the month, your rent, your feeding. You understand? If your personal expenses are bigger than if your personal expenses are bigger than what your farm can afford, then you have to cut your coat according to the material you have. You understand? Because if your personal life is bigger than what the farm can afford, that means your personal expense will definitely win and your farm will crash. You don't have any other option than to just kill the farm because of your personal need. But if you still want to maintain that your personal lifestyle, then it's either you have to like start up other side businesses or start up other businesses so that you can take a little from farm, you take a little from there, and then you meet up with what your personal lifestyle kind of is. And another this thing to consider factor is emergency planning. You know, no one prays for emergency, but it happens. It's a business. Your generator can spoil for no reason, or for reason well known, because you didn't service it when you need to service it. Your sumo in the ground that is helping you pump water might spoil. That's an emergency that will need you to spend money. So for that reason, you can decide to reduce how much you pay yourself so that you can be able to be saving a little money for emergencies. Okay, I almost forgot. The biggest emergency in the farm is the birds getting sick. You don't really know how much it's going to cost you to bring those birds back to health. So you need emergency funds. So if you don't have emergency reserve, it's wise that you limit how much you pay yourself so that you still have something left. So the summary of this is just making more profit, pay yourself more. If the income is stable, you can now fix yourself on a monthly salary. If it's not stable, you pay yourself at the end of every cycle. Then the farm size, the higher the number of birds you are raising per batch, the higher you can afford to pay yourself. Okay, what's the business goal? Is there any expansion coming soon? If any is coming, then you have to reduce how much you're paying yourself. All these things are kind of, all these factors are being reviewed every 6 months in the farm. It's not that it's kind of constant. You understand? Business is a growth stuff, it's constantly growing, so you have to kind of review it regularly, either every 6 months or every year. Now, having known the factors, many farmers confuse salary and profit. So let me just educate us a little bit about it. Both of them go hand in hand. It depends on the stage of the farm. Okay, there are times that the farms need to be paying themselves only from profit, which means if the farm does not make any profit, there is no pay for the farm owner. You get the point? And then there are times when the farmer should be paying himself salary. Whether the profit is huge or less, the monthly pay must come as salary to encourage him for, because he's physically involved as well. You get the point? So salary now on its own is the payment for work done. Payment for work that person someone has done already. Okay, you pay your farm attendants because they work for you. That's work done. Salary itself is part of cost of production, also known as what we call expenses. You understand? There are other expenses involved. Number one, since we are talking about poultry farm, you have to get the best at a particular point in time as they old chicks. That's an expense on its own. We have feed, we have transportation, we have medication to keep the birds healthy, we have unforeseen circumstances like it's known as miscellaneous expenses. You understand? Then we have salary and we have other ones. You get the point? Now profit is at the end of raising the birds, at the end of spending money in all these things. What's the next thing? The main goal of every business is to make sale, right? You sell, you sell. Now let's assume that it costs you all these things here. This expense, it costs you 7,700. I'm in Nigerian, so we are going to be using naira. And at the end of raising it, you try and you're able to sell the best at the cost of 8,700 naira. Profit now is the difference after you have, what is left after you have removed the entire cost of production. So in this situation now that you sell 8,700 and it costs you 7,700, the profit here is 1,000 naira. That is what profit is. What is left after you've removed the cost, what it costs you to produce that particular thing, what it costs you to raise the base. So having said this, now let's move over to now how much a farmer should be paying himself. Payment in poultry farming is dynamic and it comes in stages. Okay, so we'll have stage one. Stage one, farmers who find themselves here are the new poultry farmers and also farmers whose income is unpredictable. That means when the income is unpredictable, that means it affects a lot of people. For instance, I can tell you that 98% of Nigerian farmers are in this category. 98% of Nigerian farmers are in this category. Why? Because it costs 2 years ago, it cost about 2,600 naira to raise a matured broiler that you comfortably raise your shoulder and bring to the market. This year, it costs 7,700 naira to raise that same broiler that is cost this 2 years ago in Nigeria. Who knows what it will cost by the end of this year? Who knows what it will cost by next year? So income definitely will be unpredictable. So how do farmers who find themselves here pay themselves? Let me just give you a little rundown, imaginative rundown. Let's assume that you're raising your birds for 6 weeks. as a new poultry farmer or an old poultry farmer whose income is unpredictable. Okay, and at the end of raising the birds for 6 weeks, it took you 1 more week to sell the birds. That's 7 weeks. Or maybe the sales was very slow, it took you 2 weeks, which makes it 8 weeks to sell off the birds. You raised for 6 weeks, it took you 2 weeks or 1 week to sell, depending, 7 weeks or 8 weeks. Okay, at the end of the month, the first month raising the birds, that's 4 weeks. At 4 weeks, you will notice that you don't even have any income to pay yourself at the end of the month. Why? Because at the fourth week is when you are making serious expenses on behalf of those broilers that you are raising. So you can't afford to pay yourself anything by the end of the fourth week. So what is the only option left for you? The only option left for you now is to pay yourself from the profit, and that profit can only come at the end of the sales cycle. You understand? That profit can only come at the end of the sales cycle. So how much should you pay yourself? Just like every other businesses, the rule of thumb is if you pay yourself 30 to 40% from the profit, you won't be considered overpaying yourself because it will not starve the business. The remaining 60% can enable you increase the number of batch for the next cycle. Okay, the remaining 60%, assuming you're a Nigerian and the price due to inflation goes high again, can enable you raise that same number of birds that you raised previously, because the increment will not just shoot up too sharply like that. It takes gradually. For the next batch, this remaining 60% that is in the farm account can enable you raise this same number of birds should inflation affect you. Let's break it down to figures. Let's assume that it costs you, okay, 7,700 naira now to raise one broiler, but you are raising 1,000 broilers. How much will be your cost of production? It will be 7.7 million. I won't be writing the other zero, just know it's 7.7 million naira. Okay, and at the end of raising the birds, you were able to sell the birds at a price of 8,700 naira, leaving you with how much profit? 1,000 naira profit per bed. So if you're making 1,000 naira profit per bed and you sold 1,000 birds, that means your profit will be 1 million naira. Now 30% of this 1 million naira gives you 300,000 naira, and the 40% gives you 400,000 naira. It may look like a big figure, but if you remember the duration that it took you to earn this, it's almost 2 months. You get the point? So that's what how to pay yourself if you find yourself as a stage 1 poultry farmer, a new poultry farmer who has no stable income, or the income is unpredictable due to a lot of things. You must not be a new farmer to be in this category. You may be an old farmer, but due to happenings that they are using politics to play everything around, you find yourself just rotating yourself within this place. Stage 2. People who find themselves here are people who have predictable income. Their income is predictable. They have steady sales. Steady sales. They can predict their cost of production. Cost prediction is superb. You understand? And they see pure profits all the time, whether small or big. Most people who find themselves here are farms in developed countries where things work. How can they pay themselves? The best strategy that they can follow is to simply fix themselves on a steady salary. Remember, there are factors to determine the amount you pay yourself. If the profit is higher, you increase the pay. You get the point? If there is a project coming up, you kind of reduce the pay so that you have more money for that project and all that, because salary brings structure and peace of mind. And also, people who find themselves in this category now can afford to pay themselves in two different ways, because they have fixed themselves on a steady salary at the end of every month. At the end of a certain duration, they might say at the end of every quarter, at the end of the middle of the year or at the end of the year, they can decide to also put their hand inside a profit and take between 30 to 40% of the profits to reward themselves as a farm owner, as the person who is taking the risk. But this fixing themselves on a steady pay is what brings structure to their business, because everything in their business is predictable. Okay, now for poultry farmers in Nigeria who also want to, due to things are unpredictable, who want to fix themselves in this steady salary, the structure and the way to go about it is just, it's not really easy. It will cost you a little bit extra money, but in order to do such something like this, the only way you can be able to do it is to be raising two batches in which the age gap is 4 weeks. What does this mean? This means that I have 4 weeks old broilers, and immediately they clocked 4 weeks, I brought another batch. I bring another batch, day old batch, in a different pen house. That means every 4 weeks I'm making sales, and that every 4 weeks means at the end of every month you are making sales. You can afford now, since you are making sales every month, you have steady sales monthly. That means at the end of every month you can afford to also follow someone who finds himself in this stage too, to enjoy what they're enjoying. Fix yourself on a steady salary, and after a certain duration, either quarterly or middle of the year or after a year, you still dig your hand into the farm profit. Take 30 to 40%, and it won't be considered that you're overpaying yourself. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any further question, please feel free to leave it in the comment section. If you like what you just learned, leave a thumbs up, like the video, and if you are just seeing our video for the very first time, make sure you try and see it again by subscribing to the channel. That's it for this video, guys. See you next time.